What's up, my friends? It's Stormy, of course. And welcome back to another Fresh from the Theater reaction. Well, guys, today I just returned from seeing A Quiet Place. And what is my initial reaction, fresh from the theater, coming out of this very, very scary and suspenseful film? It was awesome. Yeah, guys, this movie is awesome. I mean, for once, I'm walking out of a horror film satisfied. Well, actually, I shouldn't say for once, because 2017 was actually a great year for horror films. But in 2018, I really haven't seen a scary movie that has impressed me as much as this. This movie is excellent. And let me start off by talking about the direction in this movie. The directing in this movie was absolutely phenomenal. And if you guys didn't know, John Krasinski is actually the one that directed this movie. I'm pretty sure this may be his directing debut, and he absolutely knocked it out of the park. The suspense and the overall horror that you feel in this film is unlike anything that I've seen in a really, really long time. And it's surprising that John Krasinski was able to capture that tone. Because, we don't think of John Krasinski as a director. We think of him as, Jim from The Office and his, in his, minor roles in other movies. I say minor because he's still not, he's a household name because of The Office, but he's not a household name for anything pertaining to movies, really, as of yet. Even though he's a phenomenal actor, and he really shines acting in this movie as well. But his directing in this movie was, I really am kind of taken aback a little bit by this directing, because you would think that in order for the directing to feel this good, that they would have to go get an A-grade director to come in and actually lock down this film. But no, it's one of the actors, John Krasinski, who's pulling this off, and he does a stellar job. I cannot wait to see more directing from John Krasinski. I really can't. He was excellent. Now, quite possibly the best aspect of this film, the best overall aspect of this film, even above the directing, is the acting. Now, of course, you've got John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, a real-life couple. They are a couple in real life, here together, conveying these beautiful emotions on film. And they are truly beautiful emotions, because what this film does so well is that it does not utilize dialogue. This is another movie like Castaway, and it's not even like Castaway. There's less dialogue than Castaway. This is a movie that you don't want to go see with a packed theater, because even people just having little whisper conversations to themselves, it's going to completely ruin the movie, because this movie is silent. This movie is silent. There is music being utilized in this movie, but it's just, it's sound effects and generally, like trumpet and piano suspense, like, and then the eerie piano music in the background to kind of tie everything together, right? But the movie's overall tone is so, it's captivated by its two main leads, and all the child actors too. All the child actors in the movie were very excellent, really, really excellent actors. But John Krasinski and Emily Blunt played off each other so well. Their chemistry was so natural, it was so organic, obviously because they're a real-life couple. That's why you want to get real-life couples. Whenever you can get real-life couples in front of the camera, you want to do that. And John and Emily Blunt, they really do a great job of making us realize why that is the case. Because the emotions, this movie is so deep, this is not a horror movie where you go in and it's just like a basic monster flick. Like, the monster's tearing some stuff up and then it's the end of the movie. It was just a big gore fest, a big violence fest, right? This movie is quiet and slow and suspenseful and eerie and haunting and dark. And the suspense, I keep using the word suspense because that's what this movie is. It's really a thriller. It's not so much of a horror movie as it is a thriller, because the suspense that John Krasinski is ever able to bring across in his directing, it's that kind of suspense that makes you white knuckle, that makes you start to scratch the edge of your armrest and lean back in your seat like, oh my goodness, what is going on? And then, aside from all of that, the movie's overall tone is so captivating. This is a movie that, even though they're not utilizing any dialogue, you understand exactly what's going on. Of course, they're using little, subtle hints of sign language, and they're whispering to each other, right? But the tone of this movie, the tone that this movie is trying to capture is that, these are families that can't cry with one another. when they lose family members, when they lose, people that are close to them, when they're in dire situations, when they're feeling stressed, they can't throw stuff at the wall, they can't pound on the ceilings, they can't stomp on the floor, they can't have temper tantrums. Anytime they feel it, they feel like they have to cry or let out this incredible well of emotions, they can't. And the tone of the movie captures that. It makes you feel how dire their situation is, and it makes you realize that when sound is taken out of your life, so much emotion and drama is taken out of your life, all of a sudden you can't convey emotions. Because think about it, how do all human beings convey their emotions, right? Through sound, right? We're loud and we're emotional, right? Well, once you can't convey that anymore, and the movie is silent and captures this really, really deep tone of this unsettling, life this family has gotten themselves into, you feel so sad and you feel so melancholy, and the movie's general tone is it's a thriller and it's suspenseful, but it's also very, very dark and very, very sad. Now, even though with all of that said, even though it is a really fantastic movie, it's a really excellent movie, this is not a perfect movie. And, in reality, that has nothing to do with the entire movie as a whole, right? This movie is an excellent movie as a whole. But where I'm going to knock off some points is the ending of this movie. Because this movie was really, really phenomenal up until about the last 10 minutes of the movie. And of course, I'm not giving any spoilers in this review. But what I will say about the very ending of this movie is that this is one of those, how like in all horror movies, right? In all thriller movies and all monster movies and stuff like that, you get to a certain point near the end of the movie where people have figured out how to kind of beat, their adversaries, right? And it's kind of like Signs. Remember, like in Signs, like right at the very end of the movie, they figured out like how to defeat their enemies in their own situation. This movie has a similar ending to Signs, where it's kind of like that big ending where it's like, oh my gosh, we figured out what to do. Now, we can go out into the world and actually kind of like cure our situation and start to actually fight off all these monsters and fight off all these beings. But what happens is that instead of the movie kind of drawing itself out a little bit more so you can see what happens, it ends. It just ends. Like literally the reveal happens at the end and then it just ends. That's the end of the movie. And so you're left with this very odd feeling. You're like, oh, okay. It's that kind of feeling where you're like, okay, that was a really, really excellent film, but like that ending, like why'd they have to end it right there? It leaves you wanting a little bit more, and maybe that was the point of the entire film. The point of the entire film was to cut out right there so that it leaves you with that feeling of, oh, I wonder what happens next, right? That's the point, is to leave you with that feeling. But still, it just felt a little rushed. It felt like, there are a lot of movies that I do enjoy like that just end, right? The movie just ends and their characters are left in that environment to kind of fend for themselves. I enjoy that feeling, and that's why I'm kind of split on it, right? But at the same time, like, maybe I think I would have liked to see a little bit more, to see, like what happens after like the big reveal at the end, right? Like what happens next? Do they win their fight, or are they continuously trapped in the situation? And again, that is the question that it wants you to ask. So is it really a big deal? I don't know. Also, one other tiny aspect that I didn't really enjoy too much about this movie was the fact that the creatures, right? The creatures, the actual monsters in this movie, they really weren't all that impressive. And I like this movie would have been so much better if they did not reveal what the monster is. They did such a good job all the way through the movie of not showing what the monster is. What are these things? Like, we don't know, right? But it's scarier when you don't know. But what happens is about halfway through the film, they reveal the creature. They fully reveal it so you know what's chasing them. And all of a sudden, some of the scariness, right? Some of the horror is taken away. But you know what? This is a really excellent film. I don't think that those two issues are really enough to take off a huge chunk of percentage. But there is enough to take off. There is a percentage going to be coming off of this movie because I think that it could have been so much better. Even though it was excellent, it could have been so much better than it was. There's a lot of undeveloped potential there. So for that reason, I'm going to go with a nice solid overall score of, bam, 85%. Yeah guys, 85% is what I've got. And I'm just knocking off that little bit of a percentage because there was development there that they really didn't utilize. I think that the movie could have ended differently. They didn't have to reveal the monster that really took away a lot of the horror, right? But what overtakes all of that is the brilliant acting by not just the children in this movie, but John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, and the outstanding directing by John Krasinski. I am so excited to see what else this guy has got coming down the pipeline. I want to see this guy direct more movies. He did a phenomenal job for a phenomenal movie. 85% is what I've got. Go out and see this if you guys haven't already. Just make sure that your theater is a little bit less packed than you'd like. Well, my friends, that's going to do it for this Fresh from the Theater reaction to A Quiet Place. Now it's time for you guys to leave all of your thoughts, opinions, and your scores, of course, down below in the Great White Void. And as always, until next we meet, take care, and now it's time for me to get quiet again because I've been making far too much noise. I mean, you never know when these things are going to come around the corner. You never